So good morning or good night, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to another interview of the Shield Dude on a Couch. I'm your host, Hector. And today I'm joined by the lead singer and guitar player for the band Terminalist. And his name is Emil Hansen. And we're here to talk about the new album that's coming out in September. So Emil, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. I slept last night, so that's a good change for once. How are you
Oh,
doing
good.
today?
I'm good. I'm good. So you're over there in Copenhagen. I've never been, but I've heard it's very pretty over there. So the band, I listened to the new album, and you know you're described as a technical thrash metal band inspired by bands from the '80s. So talking about the '80s, like when you first started as a musician, uh, which bands inspired you to become a musician?
So to become a musician in general, I mean, it actually took a lot of years before I actually started playing. I mean, I've played the guitars for many years. I mean, probably 20 years now, and I started when I was 10 or 11, based on my father's record collection and his old Deep Purple and Alice Cooper records. And there was a lot of hard rock. And then it later expanded into Megadeth and Metallica and played a lot of thrash, in the teenage room. I just didn't really get out of the teenage room for many years when it came to at least writing and playing music with others. That was not after, I mean, after I finished studying and I eventually figured out that maybe instead of writing about music, I should try to actually write something myself. And Terminalist came out of that along with a couple of my mates.
Cool. And I know you're putting out the follow-up to the first one that was in 2021. So how
Mhm.
was forming a band uh, in these times? Because you know you're a newer band and you're
Mhm.
forming after all the pandemic and things. So did you have any like hurdles, or was it easy for you to get the word out of the music?
I mean, the band did exist before the pandemic as well, but it is correct that we recorded the first album during the sort of the first wave of
That's
of,
what
of
yeah.
COVID, and we had the first nationwide lockdown in Denmark as well, and things opened up a little bit during the summer months, and that's what we recorded, and then it came out, the year after in 2021. I think that my roommate at the time when we started the band, played drums, and we've been friends for a couple of years. So it just seemed a little bit too obvious you know to not give it a try or something like that. And one of my friends, Morten, joined on guitar, and the hardest part was actually finding a bass player. For some reason, it was difficult for us, at least, to find a bass player to go with this kind of thrash metal. And eventually, we found a stellar guy named Kalle who also is a guitarist like the rest of us, but who was placed on the bass duty instead. And that's been the lineup on these two records that we've made now.
Okay, so going through the first record to the second one, uh, what changes musically did you had on this one different from the previous one?
I think that when we did the first one, I think we had a kind of clear vision that it was gonna be based in thrash metal, but there was gonna be a lot of different elements. And you can I mean, it's very obvious when you listen to it that there's a lot of death metal in places, and there's a lot of black metal influences as well, where we on this one scaled it back a bit on some of the death and black metal kind of influences. And I think the new one here, the Crisis as Condition, is a bit more of a straight up thrash metal record, but I still think it's kind of modern, it's kind of progressive. It has a lot of, I mean, it's modern in the sense that there are, I mean, the songwriting is quite varied, I believe, even though it's based in the sort of realm of more technical, progressive kind of thrash. But the sound is very, at least we went for something that sounded old school. so hopefully, if you dig the old 80s, thrash metal classics, you will find an appeal on this one. But I also think that we try to challenge the genre, and sort of the the overall the formula a bit, by expanding some of the song lengths, but also putting in other musical elements as well, whilst still keeping it fresh most of the time.
Yeah. So that video for mutating fractures,
Yeah.
it's a pretty interesting one. I know
Mhm.
you have like footage of war, and obviously there's been a lot of like in the Europe, Ukraine, and all the war that's been happening. Tell me a little bit about the making of the video and the inspiration for the song.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try to make it a little bit short then, because I mean it
Okay.
very much ties into the whole concept of this record. Where I mean the first one we did 2 years ago was more of a sci-fi oriented record, where this one is very much about our present, and the title, "The Crisis as Condition," is reflecting reflective of how uh, everything around us right now seems to be in a state of crisis, of some sorts. Whether we're talking, the war in Ukraine, whether we're talking energy or climate, or whether we're talking inequality or economics, there's a certain sort of crisis consciousness, everywhere. And so the overall concept is that, sort of in line with some of the old 80s kind of thrash metal records that often had this kind of social political commentary. So the overall commentary here is that we've evolved to a point where disparities and emissions and conflicts have become so great that everything that we have sort of built up in our modern, advanced, progressive kind of wealthy, democratic world is falling apart at the seams. And on the song, "Mutating Fractures," these sorts of different crises are sort of being envisioned or being reflected in this imagery, which is inspired by the COVID crisis, but where these fractures individually represent, what can you say, different crises, but they mutate and they affect and they worsen each other. So I mean, you have the COVID crisis, breaking out. You have societal lockdowns. You have inequality, becoming even greater because of the pandemic. You have Russia invading Ukraine and sparking this energy crisis as well, driving inflation up, and a lot of nations go back to just sort of expanding and burning more fossil fuels, which eventually drive up the emissions and worsen the climate crisis. So all of these different situations are inherently connected in one way or another. So they mutate, and that's what the song is about. And the song is, in the video, is very much trying to put some concrete images on these different kinds of scenarios and situations, but we're also trying to musically explore it a bit, because the song itself kind of mutates. It's very groovy, it's very sort of riffy, and then it evolves into something else along the way. So that's also a way to sort of try to use the sort of the thrash tradition in a more contemporary, modern way, I believe.
Yeah, no, makes sense, and uh, it's a good explanation to the song. So let's look
Thank
at
you.
the album artwork, which is pretty cool. So the
Mhm,
crisis as a condition.
mhm.
When I saw this album artwork, yeah, I was reminded of like it looks very sci-fi, but I
Mhm.
see there's a city and there's like collapsing. Can you tell me a little bit of what you wanted to convey with the artwork?
Yeah, so we wanted, of course, the artwork to reflect the theme and the concept of the record, and it was was quite hard this time, because how the fuck do you paint a crisis, right? The first one was easier in the sense that it was a sci-fi record, and you all, I mean, you just had to put a couple of spaceships and explosions and some stars and planets and all that kind of stuff on the album cover, and it was an amazing artwork done by a British painter named Ryan T. Hancock, who is also the one we collaborated with on this one. And he came up with this idea of sort of the tilted angle that sort of is
Mhm.
meant to be disorienting in one way, but also this sort of ball of lights, which can represent a lot of different things. So one of our main sort of demands, if you will, was that it shouldn't be too far off from the first album. We shouldn't look too far off from the first album we made, but it should still be quite visible or quite clear that we're not talking about an interstellar sci-fi Thrash record this time around. I mean, we're talking about something more man-made, something more down to earth in a very literal kind of sense. So you have the city which is being torn apart, or you have these sort of landing fields or whatever you lanes, or however you want to look at that. Then you have this ball of light which can be which can represent a lot of things. I mean, is it a nuclear bomb? Is it an alien invasion? Is it a spaceship? Or what exactly is it? And we didn't is some kind of religious figure, maybe. I mean, and we don't have an answer for that either. We just wanted to sort of be open for interpretation, while also reflecting how disastrous this whole scenario and our contemporary situation is. So that's probably the best. That's probably the best explanation that I can give. But I really think that Ryan T. Hancock, he did an outstanding job painting this. It's so rich in detail and incredible in texture, especially if you have the full imagery, which will be printed on a sort of on a gatefold vinyl. So I can recommend
Yeah,
you
I saw that you
check
have
that out
a
as well.
vinyl in a different colors.
Yeah, and we also and so we have the usual black vinyl, and then we have an orange limited edition as well. So yeah, look out for that one.
Yeah, no, I'll put the link so people can go ahead and get it. So yeah, so
Nice.
you being a fresh metal band and a newer band, like what are your takes on guitar solos today? Because I know guitar solos, like there was a time that every metal band had a lot of guitar solos, then it weighed down a little bit. What is your take on guitar solos in fresh metal in 2023?
My take on guitar solos in thrash metal probably is that they're mandatory to the genre, but they don't necessarily have to be. They don't necessarily have to be as I don't know, maybe as distinct and dominating as they were or as they are on some of the very certified classic records. I mean, when you listen to to Rust in Peace by Megadeth, I think it's 7 or 8 different guitar solos that you have on the song Hangar 18. I mean, it's a great fucking song, but I just also think that it's a bit excessive, and it's not the way that I write songs. I usually don't write them to feature guitar solos. I write them to feature a lot of other things. So they're more of a spicy element to me, and then guitar solos, of course, can have, I mean, work or function in different kind of ways. I mean, sometimes what we do in our songs might sound like a guitar solo, but in my opinion, it's actually a bit more of a theme that is sort of reiterated a couple of times, or which expands, or yeah, sort of dissolves into something else, I guess. So it's you have different ways of working with it, but I definitely think that if you play Thrash, it would be weird not to have some guitar solos sprinkled throughout your record.
Yeah, I would say so too. That would be weird. So your first record was more rooted in sci-fi. So how I'm guessing you're a huge sci-fi fan. Like what are your favorite sci-fi movies or
Ah,
books?
that's a good one. I actually have never read too much sci-fi, no, in general. So I've always been a bit more of a movie kind of guy. I think that my one of my absolute go-to favorite films of all time will always be RoboCop, which is sort of the pinnacle
The
for
original one,
dystopian.
the one from the 80s.
Yeah, of course. 87, Paul Verhoeven, though. Of course, Peter Weller in the leading role. That's the only one in my opinion.
You know what's sad
Sort of
about that movie?
what?
That the You know what's sad about that movie? The dude dies and they make him go to work.
Yeah,
Such he
yeah.
dies and like
But still, I mean, that's part of the future, right? I mean, we
yeah,
all gotta be productive. Uh, Even if you fucking pass out or pass away, just pass. Still gotta go to work. Apparently,
you gotta
it's
go to
like the
work.
perfect. It's like the pinnacle of dystopian sci-fi action entertainment sprinkled with some philosophical existentialism as well, which I absolutely adore. And of course, you gotta mention something like 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is also an absolute masterpiece. So that would be two films at least.
No, those are good films. Yeah. So yeah, so the album, it's got some great it's a great riffish album. You have also the other single is The Crisis as Condition, but you don't have a video for that one yet, right?
We actually did. We actually do have a video for that one. It's not nearly as advanced as the Mutating Fractures one. It's more like a performance video where we are standing in a
No,
studio and
but
playing
is
the
it
song.
already out? I couldn't find it on YouTube.
It's already out. It came out when the single was released, which was at the
Yeah.
end of
You know what the
June, I
problem
believe.
is? You put the name of the Terminalist, and there was a show called the Terminalist, and it takes you to all the videos of the show. I'm like, no, I'm
Ah,
looking
yeah,
at the band, not the show, which sucks. But
yeah, and
yeah,
and 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 and, and just so you know, we had no idea uh, of of about the show, the Terminal List, when we came up with the name. I mean, that was
no,
prior
I
to the show being announced. Just so that is clear, there's no connection at all.
no, plus you don't have the Terminalist. No, no,
Hmm.
no. But I know what you mean. Yeah, it sucks that. So, which besides the songs that we talked about, uh, do you have any other like? I think "Life Won't Last" is a great album opener. Like, any other song on the album for you that really represents the album as a whole, or that was difficult for you to write?
Well, I think they all represent the album in one way or another, and they all tie together quite well. And the whole lyrical concept is sort of is I mean, it's interconnected, and you have some of the same phrases from, for example, "Life Won't Last" on the song called "A Future to Weave." They pop up in the last song as well, called "Move and Strive," which is sort of our big album closer, spanning these 10 and a half minutes, which we are very proud of. I think that song we tried to do something else, try to both make some very technical sections, but also some of the more what can you say, a bit more atmospheric and a bit more improvised kind of jammy sections in that song as well, before it all erupts into this great finale. And I think it comes off pretty well. I also really like the opener, "Life Won't Last," and there's a lot of small gems in that one, for example. So I mean, if you're very much into the whole thrash canon, and you're aware of, you know, the sci-fi thrash scene as well, and you had this whole sort of Canadian branch that were of thrash metal in the late 80s and beginning of the 90s, where there was something slightly more technical and slightly more weird going on. Of course, Voivod being sort of the
That's what I
legendary
was going to mention, Boybot. Yeah.
exponential act for that one. But you also had a quite overlooked band, in my opinion, called Oblivion, and they released their first album called From This Day Forward in 1990, I believe, where the first track, I mean the title track on that one, opens with the line, "No, nothing's gonna be the same from this day forward," and I've listened a lot to that, and I've thought, what the, I mean, that's a great fucking line to open with. And I always like when a metal album, you know, starts off, you know, very fucking hard and has a great opening line that sort of sums up the concept or the theme or the message. And very much inspired by the Oblivion song. The opening line on Life Won't Last is "It's never gonna be the same," which I think sort of sums up what we're trying to convey here, that the world that we once knew is not the one we live in anymore, and it kind of rings true throughout, or it rings through in the last song, Moving Strive, as well, where we have a section which is where the lyrics, at least, are sort of pulled from the Coma of Souls album by Creator. That's a song called Material World Paranoia, where Mili Petrozza, he yells, or he screams, that the promise of a better future is a lie. And I sort of took that one as well, and we used that in the last song in one of the sections. So there's a lot of sort of small Easter eggs. If you're a thrash aficionado, you might find some different quotes or paraphrases around on the record. And I usually like that you have those sorts of layers that you can dive into if you feel like, you know, going further.
Also, and I think it's good to have like a strong album opener and a strong closer, and I think you have that with this album. So yeah, it's a fun record, you know, very technical, very like technical thrash metal, very rooted in those 80s band that you talked about. So Emil, before I let you go, and since we talked a lot about thrash metal, like, which are your favorite 5 thrash metal albums of all time, and why?
Favorite 5 of all time. Okay, let me just think for a second. Mm.
I'm making you think, yes.
Yeah, because I mean, if it has to be 5, I'm not actually sure if my picks are that interesting, that they're I think that some very sort of canonized records that you can always go back to would be Rust in Peace, as I already mentioned, by Megadeth. Of course, I played that a lot. I played a lot of the songs in my teenage room, and, you know, they still resonate with me, and the whole kind of riffing style that also the Megadeth and that record in particular sort of created the riffing foundation for
Yeah.
what we play today. And of course, Metallica. I'm always a little bit torn between whether it's Kill 'Em All or And Justice for All that is actually my favorite. But since we're dealing with some more progressive kind of stuff here, then I would probably say And Justice for All, because it just expands so much on the Metallica legacy, while also being really, I mean, of course you have the lacking bass, but it's still so gritty, and there's a lot of social commentary on that record. There's a lot of progressive elements that I really find striking, and it's just a record that you can revisit so many times without really getting too bored, at least. Dyer's Eve is one of the best songs in my opinion
Oh
here.
yeah, great closer.
yeah, really fucking great closer. Of course, Rain in Blood. No, don't need to say a lot about that one. I mean, it's just a great fucking record. Maybe I would throw in a Danish pick as well, by Inheritance, by Artillery, a great, maybe a little bit overlooked technical thrash record with some incredible songs on there. Don't Believe, Bomb Food, and Comaniac, of course. And well, I would probably also mention another kind of tech thrash classic, which would be Mental Vortex by Coroner, an amazing record, and probably the pinnacle, if you, in my opinion, unless on some days I would probably say No More Color is the better one. Depends a little bit on the mood, but Mental Vortex is usually my go-to. And if I may add a sixth one
Of
as
course.
well, which is absolutely mandatory since since we're talking about Terminalist, which is Terminal Redux by Vector, which is sort of probably the only later era fresh album that I would highlight in this kind of yeah, in this kind of section. It's just so immense and so over the top in so many ways, but also so damn accomplished. And Terminal Redux is one of the reasons why Terminalist even became a band. It's one of the reasons why we chose that name. That's one of the records that I could say that it actually did have a profound effect on me and changed my life course. Maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. We'll see how it all adds up some years from now. But yeah, that would be my top 6 probably.
Yeah, you threw in an honorable mention. So, Emil, it was great chatting with you for a bit. So here's the Crisis as Conditioned. It's coming out on September 8th. I'll put the link so everyone who wants to pre-order, get that vinyl, does so. So once you put out the album, are you going on shows? Are you doing like a release show for the album?
We have one release show. I mean, we have a release show on the same. I mean, on the release day here in Copenhagen. It's actually at the free town of Christiania, if you ever heard about that, or maybe some of your viewers do. It's gonna be great. We played there once before 2 years ago. Now we're gonna try to repeat the success, and hopefully some people will show up and celebrate with us. And after that, we're working on it.
Nice.
There will be something happening.
Awesome. So, Emil, it's been great chatting with you about the Terminalist and the upcoming album, and hope that the album is a success, and keep metal and thrash metal alive, baby. So
I
until
will do
next
my
time,
absolute
people.
best.
Yeah, this is Hector, the Shield Dude on a couch, and I'll see you all right here on the couch. Thank you, and good night.